They thought it was over before it even started. That's the crazy part. The courtroom was already leaning one way, and you could feel it in the air, like when a game's decided before halftime and everyone's just waiting for the clock to run out. Officer Travis Klein sat there on the witness stand with that look. You know, the one half-smile, relaxed shoulders, like nothing in the world could touch him. Like the guy in the wrinkled jail clothes sitting a few feet away was already erased. And I remember thinking, sitting there, hands folded, chains cold against my waist, this whole room thinks they know who I am, they think they've got me figured out. Yeah, that happened. But let me rewind, because none of this started in a courtroom. It started on a wet stretch of pavement outside an airport hotel late at night, rain coming down just enough to make everything reflective, slick, a little dangerous. I was sitting in my car engine off legally parked, waiting on my younger brother Devin, whose flight got delayed, scrolling my phone, checking my watch, annoyed but not stressed. I wasn't doing anything suspicious, wasn't blasting music, wasn't blocking traffic, just sitting there minding my business, you know what I mean? Across the street, I noticed a patrol car idling, 2 officers inside, heater running, windshield wipers slapping back and forth like a metronome, and I didn't think much of it, because why would I? Then the lights came on, red and blue, flooding my dashboard before the siren even chirped, and my stomach sank just a little, not panic, more like recognition. I turned the car off, rolled the window down, put my hands on the steering wheel where they could see them, textbook, calm, deliberate, because I knew the rules better than most people think. Officer Klein walked up like he owned the street, flashlight straight in my face, not a greeting in sight, just license and registration, sharp, impatient. I said, "Good evening, officer, is there a problem?" And that was apparently the wrong thing to say, because his jaw tightened and he leaned in closer like I'd challenged him. "The problem is you asking questions. License. Now." I explained my movements before I made them: glove compartment, wallet, slow, clear, respectful. And when I handed everything over, he barely glanced at my name before saying, "Step out of the vehicle." I asked why, because I'm allowed to ask why, parked legally. No violation, and he laughed. Actually laughed and said, "You're resisting. Step out or I drag you out." That's when I made a choice, the kind of choice you don't realize you're making until later. I could push back, escalate, let pride take the wheel, or I could comply and let him hang himself with his own words. I stepped out into the rain. From there, it turned into theater. Hands on the hood, feet spread, shove hard enough to knock the breath out of me, cold metal against my cheek, rain soaking my clothes. His rookie partner muttered something like, "He's complying," and Klein snapped at him to shut up. He patted me down, rough, unnecessary, reached into my pocket and tossed my phone onto the pavement where it skidded through a puddle. I told him that was my property, and he smirked, said, "Oops," like it was funny. And the thing is, he found nothing, no drugs, no weapon, no excuse, just a man in the rain, but he'd already committed to the scene, already decided I was the bad guy, and backing down wasn't an option for him. So he leaned in and said, loud enough for the camera, "I smell alcohol." I told him I hadn't had a drink in over 10 years, which was true, and his response was, "I say you smell like a bar," and just like that, reality bent around his report. When I told him calmly that he was making a mistake, that he should reconsider, his eyes went cold. Cuffs came out, snapped on, too tight, metal biting into skin. Threatening an officer, he said, like he was adding toppings to a pizza order. "You're going for a ride." At the station, it was exactly what you'd expect if you've ever been inside one stale coffee disinfectant, that low hum of fluorescent lights, and a culture that closes ranks without even thinking about it. He walked me through like a prize, announced my charges to a couple guys by the coffee machine, got a few laughs, and I kept my mouth shut, watched everything, the skipped steps, the sloppy process, the desk sergeant who didn't even look up when my rights were denied. I asked for a breath test, asked for my phone call, cited procedure, and they ignored me, laughed it off, booked me anyway, took my belt, my laces, slammed me into a holding cell. Like that was the end of the story. Hours passed, no sleep. Anger sitting heavy in my chest, not the explosive kind, the focused kind, the kind that makes you start organizing thoughts instead of throwing punches. Klein walked past the bars, tapping his baton, mocking me, telling me how comfortable I looked. And at one point I stood up, looked him straight in the eye, and told him he still had a chance to fix it, to release me and correct the report. He laughed so hard he had to wipe his eyes and told me the judge would believe him because he had the badge, and the badge was the truth. I told him the badge was supposed to represent the truth, and he leaned in and said, "I am the truth." Yeah. That stuck with me. Morning came. They shackled me at the waist, loaded me into a transport van with half a dozen other guys trading war stories, and I stayed quiet because talking wouldn't help. I walked into court looking exactly how he wanted me to look. Tired, wrinkled, unshaven like a stereotype wrapped in chains. The public defender glanced at my file and immediately started pushing a plea probation fine counseling like it was the only rational option, and I told her I wasn't pleading guilty, that I'd represent myself, and she looked at me like I'd just made things worse. The prosecutor asked for high bail, painted me as aggressive, dangerous, and I could feel the room leaning again the same way it leaned the night before. When the judge asked for my response, I stood up and something shifted, not in the room yet, but in me. I laid it out calmly, clearly. Protocol violations, delayed testing, denied counsel, perjury. And I could see the impatience on the prosecutor's face, the skepticism on the judge's, the amusement on Klein's. I mentioned federal screening, recent toxicology test documentation available within minutes, and that got the judge's attention just enough. Then she asked the question, the one Klein didn't expect anyone to ask. "Mr. Rains, what do you do for a living?" And I didn't rush it because timing matters. I said my name, my title, my role investigating systemic law enforcement misconduct, and the silence that followed felt physical, like pressure in your ears when an elevator drops. The prosecutor dropped his pen, the judge's expression changed completely, and Klein stood up, blurting that I was lying, which only made things worse for him. When the clerk confirmed my identity, when the judge dismissed all charges and apologized, I felt relief. Sure, but mostly I felt anger for the people who never get that moment, never get to flip the script. I told the judge as much, then I walked past Klein, stopped inches from him, and told him to start practicing his right to remain silent because he was going to need it. I could have gone home after that, gotten a shower, tried to forget the whole thing, but I couldn't, because that cell, that laugh, that casual cruelty, it doesn't just vanish. I called my boss, explained what happened, and the tone on the other end of the line went from disbelief to something sharp and focused real fast. Within hours, we had subpoenas, warrants, agents moving, and when I walked back into that precinct in a clean suit flanked by federal investigators, the same people who laughed the night before couldn't even meet my eyes. We secured servers, pulled footage, froze access, and I told the rookie, the one who looked sick to his stomach, that he had a choice witness or defendant, and I meant it. In the captain's office, the excuses came fast. Misunderstanding, one bad arrest. Good cop made a mistake, and I shut that down with data complaints. Buried patterns, ignored a culture that protected a bully because he wore the same uniform. When Klein stormed in, demanding authority, he no longer had the warrants, were already in motion, his locker, his car, his phone. And when we found the drop gun, the ledger of stolen property, the lies stacked on lies, his bravado finally cracked. The rookie broke necks told us about a college kid framed on a traffic stop, drugs planted when nothing was found, a broken arm, weeks in jail for something he didn't do. And that's when this stopped being about me entirely. We got that kid, released charges, dropped, record wiped, and watching his mother cry in relief reminded me why I do what I do, why titles don't matter if they're not used for something real. Klein didn't go quietly when the warrants hit his house, tried to blame orders, stats, pressure, but when you're standing in your living room in cuffs with cameras rolling, excuses don't carry much weight. He took the plea years in federal prison because the alternative was dragging every victim back into the spotlight, and when the sentence came down months later, there was no celebration, just a heavy sense of balance restored at least a little. Standing at the microphones afterward, I told the truth, not the comfortable version, the real one. This wasn't one bad officer, it was a system that allowed him to thrive, and if it took someone like me to stop it, that meant the system was already failing too many people. We announced audits, legal support for defendants who usually get steamrolled oversight that makes people uncomfortable. And yeah, that started arguments immediately. Some folks cheered, some accused us of being anti-police, others said it didn't go far enough. And honestly, that debate is the point. So here's what I want to know from you, because this story doesn't belong to me alone. If you'd been sitting in that car in the rain doing everything right,